And welcome back to episode number 7, lucky number 7. And we are lucky to have a great guest, Dr. Moises Aguirre, Superintendent of the Sweetwater Union High School District. Before we get started in a great conversation and dialogue, I want to let you know that this episode is sponsored by CopyLink, celebrating 30 years as your trusted source of office technology and managed service. CopyLink, 30 years. Locally owned and operated. Kevin and Kimberly Marshall, some of the finest people you could ever meet. So enough bragging about my friends. Let's get right into my new friend right here, Dr. Moises Aguirre, Superintendent of the Sweetwater Union High School District. He and I have had a chance to kind of get to know each other over the last year or so. We kind of connected at the YMCA, and I was very excited when he and I started talking about my publishing with the school district, what we were doing in the past and thinking about bringing it back. And he was ready to go right on board with our hometown newsprint. And he put pen to paper. He backed up his words. And if you want to know more about what's going on in the school district and print, especially if you're looking for a job, they are hiring. Look to the last 3 issues of our hometown newsprint. But most importantly, what's probably at the top of many of our viewers' mind is kind of the state of the school district. And we always like to start off with that because it allows us to kind of catch up and have a starting point of where is the school district right now, because we're coming out of this COVID world, which you cannot run away fast enough from. And, there were a lot of dynamics to that. And I think it hit students in the educational institutions probably harder than most people other than, your service industry. So let's kind of start off with that. Like, how is that? Where are we at as far as dealing with COVID in the Sweetwater district?
Well, first of all, thank you, Michael, for having me on this evening. It's really a pleasure to be with you, and I really appreciate the partnership, especially as it helps us communicate with our parents and our staff and our community. Schools are an integral part of our community, and so I appreciate the opportunity to be here and have a chat with you, and so that our families can hear directly from us. So the way I would characterize where we currently are is we're at a point of transition. The last couple of years were really challenging from the COVID perspective. We all know the level of loss and trauma that occurred across our communities. So right now, the way I would describe it is that we're in a transition phase from a pandemic more towards an endemic. So what does endemic mean in my mind, and the way it's described is really we're learning to live with COVID, which means we have to have testing protocols. We can revise our guidelines to meet the moment. Points of high transmission in the community, we're probably going to have some additional layers of protection. Points of low transmission, we can probably have less of these protocols. So for us, it's really transitioning from this moment of pandemic where there were a lot of unknowns now to endemic, where there's more research, we have more experience. There's vaccines and there's pharmaceuticals as well. So we're in a place where now we have more arrows in our quiver to help us really deal with the situation so that we can really focus on our mission, which is teaching and learning and really supporting our community in that way. And so when you ask about the state of the district, I would say it's in a state of stable trend. We've reached stability and we're transitioning from a pandemic perspective. And we really look forward to really those opportunities where our families get to go out and enjoy athletic events or visual and performing art events and really re-engage the schools as the community institutions that we are.
I think that's important because the conversation that goes around, and you can listen to major market media, you can talk to friends, but I think the belief that another pandemic or issues like that, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when it's going to happen again. And the best thing that we could do is be more prepared next time than we were before. And I think the mayor, Mary, calls me Mr. Positive because I always have a positive perspective about things. And as odd as this may sound, I think there is a positive perspective in what we learned in COVID. I think COVID answered a lot of questions for a lot of people, both academically, even in media. So in media, before the pandemic, people kept talking about how digital world was going to be, everything's going to be online. Everything is web-based. Paper is old, is archaic. It's no longer useful. And COVID proved that wrong because here we are back in print. A big conversation before COVID was distance learning or app-based or computer-based learning was going to be the future, that we really didn't need classrooms and we really didn't need, schools. Everything could be done online. And that was, you would see these institutions pop up in Chula Vista for a short period of time, trying to capture that audience, and then they would disappear. And you always wondered why they didn't last. And I think COVID and forcing schools to have to go to a remote learning model definitely showed some cracks in the porcelain. It had benefits, obviously, because you still got a great Launch Academy, which is a great example of distance learning. But I think we learned some things about students and socialization and the need for the human connectivity. Go into that a little bit.
So that's a great example of what we've been discussing in our schools around social emotional learning. As you mentioned before the pandemic, there seemed to be this idea that online learning, whether it's through massive online courses or other such things, that would be a panacea. We'd open up, learning through a digital platform. And what we learned is that human beings need a connection, a social connection, an emotional connection. And so for me, every opportunity, regardless of a negative or positive, is an opportunity for learning. And one of the things that I believe our district learned is that really the ability to have a balanced approach. What the pandemic did is it forced us, all of our teachers, our educators, our nutrition services, everybody to transition really abruptly. And so with that transition came good and bad. On the positive side, I'll start with positive. Um, Most of our teachers are now on Google Classroom. They have their curriculum on there, their materials. So now it's more easily accessible, which is, I think, a positive. However, on the flip side, we learned that students need that connectivity, particularly young students who are in the process of developing into young adults, middle school or high school level. It's really important that they have that connection. One thing that we learned, that we observed last year really, was that schools serve such an important aspect of social development for our young students, particularly when it comes to behavior. How do you behave in a school? How do you behave in a community in a way that's respectful, that honors our differences, and that does so in a way that really demonstrates a growth and a maturity level? And that's what schools had done. So while we were out for that year and a half to 2 years, that was really absent, and we definitely noticed that in terms of some behaviors we were observing in classes, in classrooms, and campuses. And so what it did is it allowed us to refocus on supporting, providing some social emotional supports, bring some additional safety and security supports, and really taking into account that schools serve such an important growth and development for our students. Really, the socialization. How do you engage? How do you engage in a democracy? How do you engage in a community in a way that's respectful, that allows for difference of opinion, but also is a very mature way? So that's one thing that we observed, and we tried to now bring in some supports to make sure that we're offering that support to our students, so they have that growth in social emotional areas, as well as their academics and as well as technology. And students connect in schools in such different ways. They can connect through visual and performing arts. They can connect in athletics, and we know how athletics is such a vital part of our district. They can connect in robotics. We have a great and thriving robotics community. They can connect through CTE, and I know you're part of the Pumpkin Smash.
Yep.
So kids learning with hands, like their hands, is really important. That kinetic learning, and to be able to have an experience-based learning set of opportunities for our students is really important. And I think that's what was missing when you're online. You don't have the ability to learn through experience. You're learning through a camera, and that's a challenge. There might be a place for learning, but what we definitely learned is that students need that in-person experience to grow their social and emotional aspects. So I think, like you said, there's learning opportunities. Some of it was good, and it allowed us to really move some of our strategies and our resources online. But at the same time, making sure that we acknowledge the need for human contact. It's so critical, and we missed it for 2 years, and we noticed when we came back, our students definitely needed that. So as a system, that's one of those are a set of learnings that we had, is the need to provide support and growth and continuous development for our youth.
I think one of the things I heard a lot from my friends who children were still in school is this. I wouldn't say this appreciation for educators. Growing up and having my kids go through the school system and being in a group of parents, you'd always have a couple of parents who are always nitpicking the schools, the teachers, and they were never happy. The kid, they never really invested time to understand what was going on in their kids' classroom. They always just listened to their kids and then defended their kids without having all the information until their kids became their own students of the parents. And the parents quickly realized my son or daughter is different at school than they are at home. And now I am the teacher at home. I am the administrator at home, making sure that my kid locks in, gets up out of bed, logs in, does his class, and they start to see that attitude that child has. And that's not for everybody, but I think very quickly, parents started having a greater appreciation for educators, realizing if I'm having this kind of challenge with my own child, times that by 30 to 32, and realize this is what our teachers go through every day. It's like herding cats. You're dealing with 32 different personalities, 32 different learning aptitudes. And I believe that teachers are often under-recognized for the sacrifices they make and the things they do. And I believe that, again, as Mr. Positive, one of the things that came out of COVID is, and I'm hoping you'll agree with me, that parents had a greater appreciation and respect to teachers now that the kids are back in school, now that the parents aren't having to manage their kids' daily activities through education, and that the teachers are doing their job, that are doing it well, and the parents show some more respect and appreciation. Is that the case?
I think that's definitely the case for the vast majority in our community. I think, again, the way that we support our students and the way we support our youth is in partnership. Parents have, obviously, you're the first teacher, but our teachers in our schools play a vital role in helping the student develop in whatever area it may be. And so I really would hope, and is my very sincere hope, that it's about that partnership, that parents, you have a very important role, the teachers have a very important role, the coach or the VAPA instructor, they have a very important role, the teacher who plays the VEX robotics coach as well. So we all have an integral part of the developing our youth. It truly does take a village. And I do appreciate what you mentioned around having that appreciation of just the really deep level of skill set and pedagogy that our teachers have, and the deep level of care that our cafeteria workers and our bus drivers and our school secretaries and our counselors and our psychologists and our nurses and our gardeners and our custodians. We have a tremendous amount of human effort going into supporting the development of our youth. And it's like a little city at each high school and middle school. It really is being able to provide these supports and growth opportunities for our students. And it's wonderful to see. It's wonderful to be in classrooms again, as I've been visiting schools this semester, and to be able to see that learning happening. If students feel the need to have a mask, they can have a mask. If they feel like they don't need to have a mask, and then they don't have to wear a mask. So having that flexibility, I think, is part of that change to an endemic model from a pandemic model. But I really do appreciate that partnership, I would hope, has become more clear of just the role, that such important role that our teachers and our educators play in conjunction with our parents. I also don't want our parents to feel like they're not an important part of this. We saw some very strong, vigorous debate across the country. And I think that perhaps was some frustration from a lack of partnership or lack of understanding that happened. So for us as a school district, as a learning institution, it's critical that we support the learning and the partnership of all of our parents and all of our students, our teachers, our stakeholders. It's a critical piece, and it's where democracy happens. The schoolhouse is one of the more fundamental institutions of our democracy, and I think not having access to schoolhouse for reasons of a pandemic really brought frustration to the fore. And I'd like to think that as a country, and as more locally as a district and as a community, we're going to come together and have these discussions, have these debates, but do it in a way that's civil, so that we're modeling for our next generation how to have debates, how to have agreement and disagreement, do it in a way that's civilly, so we can grow and we can learn together.
That's the one word I think that needs to come back in the classroom, and that word is civility. Because the schools, like the businesses, like the government, like the healthcare providers, during COVID, we are on these ebb and flows, and nobody really could steer the ship. Things changed so much, and there were so many moving parts. And so it created this dynamic where people were just looking for some solid answers. And unfortunately, for the first 6 months, no one had solid answers, because no one had experienced this before for over 100 years. And there was just so much of that rhetoric and so much of that, the dismantling of communication that really, I think, hampered us more than it helped us. And now that we're looking back, I think some of us can say, yeah, we may have been a little bit too, boisterous about our opinions without all the facts. But now that we've calmed down, now that we've righted the ship, we've learned, and we're moving forward. This is the exciting part. So that kind of brings us back to now that we're back in school and we've righted the ship and we're moving forward. Activities are back. I see sports are back. We got high school football, basketball, drama. We've got, yes, robotics, VEX, and the pumpkin smash happened again this year, which was the biggest we had in the 6-year history with 21 teams. And a majority of those teams were middle schools. That seems to be our sweet spot, which is, I think it goes to show the hunger that those young people have in middle school about, STEAM activities. So what other things are coming out of this that you're learning as far as activity? Are new clubs forming? Are new things coming about that you didn't think of before that has engaged students more into education?
So I think there's some definitely. So there's community service oriented clubs that are going on campuses. Obviously, there's different interest areas that our students can explore. They can explore their identity. We have a Black Student Union across most of our campuses. I want to say all of our campuses, but probably most. We have Mecha clubs. We have Filipino affinity groups. Again, supporting each student so they can explore. Really, middle school and high school is a time for exploration. And so a time for them to explore their interests, their identities, their things that they think they might be interested in. And then perhaps they find out they're not. They might want to be engineers and they go to an internship and learn, maybe engineering is not for them, or maybe it is and they love engineering. So for me, exploration is key as we're coming back, really building connection. That's the other thing that research is really showing us, is that a student who's connected, a student who's engaged, is a student who's going to participate. And so for me, that's really key as well. Something we're really proud of is just recently we had very productive conversations with San Diego State around the Compact for Success. That's a very longstanding partnership we have with San Diego State. I'm happy to report that our board approved extending that through the year 2030 in collaboration with San Diego State. And we're going to be having a signing ceremony shortly to celebrate and commemorate that extension through 2030. It's something our district has had for a long time. I think other districts in other areas may look at us with a little bit of envy.
Oh, I can tell you, I've talked to a lot of other teachers and people from even outside San Diego, across the nation, and they're like, "You have what?
Mhm.
You do what? You can?" And so that is a Compact for Success. If you don't know what that is, basically it's an agreement between Sweetwater and San Diego State. When my kids were students, the threshold for GPA, which means you had to have been in the Sweetwater district from 7th grade to 12th. Is that still the case?
That's still the case.
So you do have to be in for those 6 years. Your GPA when my children were students was 3.0. I understand that's been raised to 3.5.
It'll increase to 3.5 over a series of years. So it'll be a escalation over time.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that is an incredible program, because from what I hear, 150,000 applications go to San Diego State each year, and they only have 30,000 spots. And if you're a Compact scholar in Sweetwater, you're guaranteed not a scholarship, it's just placement and admission into that. So that is very rare. It's a great program. Is there any other program attached to the Compact for Success? In the past, there was a RISE program.
Mhm.
Is that something that's still around?
Well, we added a wrinkle this time around, and it's a partnership with Southwestern Community College. And in essence, it adds yet another pipeline into San Diego State. So if students are on their way and they've been in Sweetwater Union High School District and they go to community college at Southwestern, which is in Chula Vista.
Right.
Actually, they have a number of locations. They have in National City, Otamisa, San Isidro, but their main campus is in Chula Vista. So we added a kind of a wrinkle there, and that now if you can also go through to San Diego State via Southwestern for the first 2 years. It's almost like a guaranteed transfer agreement.
Good.
And it adds yet another avenue or another pathway for our students who may be thinking of going to San Diego State, which is really constructive. And I think the partnership between Dr. De La Torre at San Diego State, Dr. Sanchez at Southwestern, and the work that we have in Sweetwater Union High School District really speaks to the constructive nature, thinking of doing things a little bit different, to open access, to really afford our students the possibility to attend that 4-year college at San Diego State, along the way with focusing on offering more opportunities for experience-based learning, kind of what we were talking about earlier with the VEX robotic,
Right.
doing internships, doing externships.
So I noticed in the last few issues of our hometown newsprint, you're hiring. So I know in the past there's been a focus on hiring alumni. Is it still a focus of getting previous students who were, and there's a couple of stories that have come up, what was it? Lindsay Goulet was one of them. And the previous principal of Sweetwater, Maribel Gavin,
Dr. Gavin.
which I know she's moved up a little bit more. Both, we don't have time to go into the stories, but those are just two of probably many success stories where they were students in Sweetwater, went through college, got their degrees, and came back and actually now teaching or doing more, administrating in the district. And I think there's still a great vision, hopefully, for Sweetwater, that they want to capture more compact scholars or any graduate of Sweetwater that has a desire to teach, to consider coming back and teaching in the district that they went to school in.
Definitely. I think that adds, while the RISE program specifically has been put on pause due to different issues, at the end of the day, we have a significant portion of our staff, our teachers, and others, by the way, who have graduated from Sweetwater schools, which really, I think, is a sense of pride for our district. Anytime you have graduates who come back and want to work in the district, I think speaks very well for having a healthy district that people want to be part of. But we also have other positions in addition to some in our teaching. We critically need nutrition services workers. We critically need bus drivers. There's a lot of need across different parts of the district. We're not immune to the laws of economics.
Right.
And for those who may be aware, there's a job shortage around different types of positions, not only in education, but in technology and construction and different areas. And so we're definitely hiring, as you mentioned, in different areas. So we invite folks to take a look at our website. We also use a website called EdJoin, which is where the majority of education jobs are advertised. We're also working with our hometown production. So again, trying to get word out in as many places as possible, because we are in need of increasing our labor force in different areas. We do this, with an eye towards our fiscal reality that over time we're projected to have declining enrollment. So we're trying to find a balance there, but at this point, we definitely have a need to fill our labor force. Now, in terms of what does that mean when you have declining enrollment, I don't know if the viewers might know, but in essence, what we're anticipating is that over the course of time, our district is going to serve less students. That means we have to be better prepared at anticipating what that's going to mean for us. So from time to time, I will get, for example, a question about construction of a new school. That's probably not going to be in the cards, given that we have less and less students. What we are going to be focusing with an equity lens is on modernizing our facilities. So with our next round of bond funding that we just recently issued, we're looking to build or install 4 artificial track and fields at the 4 remaining schools in our district that don't have an artificial track and field. They all happen to be on the west side of either Chula Vista, or they're in Imperial Beach, or South San Diego at Southwest High School. So for us is, how do we modernize our schools? How do we bring them up to date? And really that's really more the focus, and then building new schools. It's modernizing them and perhaps rebuilding existing schools rather than purchasing property, land, and building a new school. Again, because the trajectory and the trend is such that we do have declining enrollment, so we want to be able to manage that responsibly and anticipate some of that.
So are we at the latter part of, is it Proposition R or Measure R?
It's Proposition O.
Oh,
that was
R's for the is for this college then,
I
right?
believe it is. Yes, I believe
Okay.
community college. So for us, we have Prop O, which I believe was passed in 2006.
Yeah.
And then our most recent bond, which was approved in 2018, is Measure DD.
Okay.
And so between the two, we were able to issue bonds out of Measure DD. We recently issued approximately $200 million worth of bonds, and Prop O was approximately $50 million. So again, looking to modernize some of our campuses, as I mentioned, what we're doing with our track and fields. I think it's really a focus on equity, what we're doing with supporting our campuses like Chula Vista High School, Southwest High School, Mar Vista High School, and Castle Park High School. We have some resources for facility improvements, and we want to make sure we do that in a way that's equitable, and in a way that allows us to be strategic as well.
So there's no new high schools being planned,
Correct.
but there's a lot of new development going on, both Baldwin and Sons and Home Fed with
Fed.
Escaya,
Mhm.
which is projected, I think, over the next decade to have almost 30,000 new homes. Won't that increase student body at some point?
So that's what we do is we develop a mathematical formula, and basically what you find is a yield of students per type of household. And those formulas are currently what they're indicating to us is because of different circumstances. Again, the price of a home in the South Bay is getting pretty high. We have declining birth rates as well as declining rates of immigration. So when you put all these factors together, we do anticipate a decline in enrollment, perhaps some stability on the east side, like at Olympian High School or East Lake High School. And we have contingency plans for that. When in essence, would be perhaps looking to build some two-story structure on the campus. But in terms of building a whole new campus, the numbers really aren't there. But we could definitely do is looking at using our existing space in a different way, such as going vertical to two-story buildings.
That's a good
perhaps.
idea.
Mhm.
So good. So would you say that the district is closer to a normalcy than it was before? Now that you seem to have a very good grasp on what's going on, which is why you're probably a very good superintendent, because you've got to know a lot about everything.
Mhm.
And I'm always amazed when I have conversations with superintendents and the breadth of knowledge they have, because it's not one dimensional. You have so many things you've got to know, and you just demonstrated that. So all in all, when you look at where we are with the district now, we're in good shape. We have a grasp of the future. We have programs returning. There is a sense of normalcy. And someone reached out to us, and someone had asked, and I don't know if you, Miriam Aguilar Escobar asks, are you going to be doing coffee meetings again? Were you doing coffee meetings in the past?
We've done them from time to time in different ways, but yeah, definitely want to make sure that we have opportunities to meet with our parents, our community, and our stakeholders in different ways. Sometimes I even get at the supermarket and somebody taps me on the shoulder like, "Hey, aren't you?" And so it just recently happened at a band pageant. The high school band pageant is happening at Southwestern Community College right before the Thanksgiving break. And somebody said, "Hey, aren't you superintendent? What's going on with that?" I said, the fact we're here at a band pageant, we haven't been able to do this, come together as a community. This is wonderful. And it's really heartening. I really appreciate, hearing those comments, questions. Sometimes they're easy, sometimes they're not easy, but that's what we're here for. We're here to have a conversation. Again, we're modeling that dialogue. That's what we try to do.
So that band pageant, that's something I want to talk about, because I didn't even have that on my list, but I remember a decade, if not more ago, that a rising star out of the Sweetwater School District, Jason Pagao, who's now the CEO of the Asian Chamber,
Mhm.
was a band leader who I believe if he actually brought the band review back for many years. That was happening both at the Otay Ranch Shopping Center. It happened down on the new extension of H Street. But Jason is a Filipino American, and you might recognize him because I think he ran for city council a number of years ago. He did, but a brilliant person. But he unseated a longstanding Scottish. So Jason is an international recognized band leader globally, and he kind of broke the mold on what those band leaders look. And if you ever see old footage of him and how he handles that big baton or whatever, the mass, I think it's called a mass. He's a wonder to behold, because that thing is incredible. It's big, and he makes it look like a debutante throwing a little thing around. I mean, it's just, but he's one of those great success stories that it's come out of. But the band review is something I've always enjoyed. So I'm glad to see that it is back, because schools from all over California would come and compete at this band review. So thank you for giving us another opportunity to get out there and support school activities like band, because it's like a big parade of just nothing but bands.
And this parent I was talking to that evening actually said, "Look, my kid just lit up when they could come to the band pageant all over again after 2.5 years of not being able to do this." And so, when you say kind of where we are, I really do think we're making strides towards normalcy. I don't think we're at normalcy before COVID yet. But we're definitely making very strong strides towards that. And one of the things we really focused on was bringing stability, because there was a lot of instability. A lot of us felt like it was really difficult to have a sense of what was going on in our world. And so for us as a school district, that was really the focus, making sense of a very confusing time.
Yeah.
And so I think we all across the country here locally, we did the best we could, take input from different perspectives, listen intently and listen respectfully, and then make plans based on the best knowledge that we had at any one given moment in time, which kept shifting from moment to moment.
Yeah,
So
that's right. You were going one direction. They say, no, 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 we were wrong about that. Just come over here. And it was this, I think if you kept doing it long enough, you just go in a complete circle.
mhm.
And sometimes you feel like you were doing that. Like, well, we're back at the point where we were before. And it's so, and you have to, an institution as large as a school district is like a cruise ship. It doesn't turn on a dime, but you guys did very good with what you had to deal with in a environment that had not been seen for 100 years. Come falling on your lap in literally in a matter of days. This wasn't a slow boil. It was kind of one day normalcy, the next day, boom, everything changes.
Yep.
And we all had to learn to adjust.
And it was quite an adjustment. And again, I think here in the South Bay, we're really, I think, modeled a way forward, a way to do it in a respectful manner. As challenging as it was, I do get the sense that the stakeholders we all came together and try to problem solve this. It was not easy. It was like you said, it was very rapid, and a system that educates 36,000 students, that employs, including subs, a little over 4,000 employees. It's not easy to turn such a big organization. But at the end of the day, we came together. We also had a very strong coordination effort with our feeder districts. So for those who may not know, Sweetwater Union High School District is a secondary district. We only serve middle and high schools as well as adult schools. We don't serve elementary grades. So we had to coordinate very closely with Chula Vista Elementary District, with San Isidro School District, National School District,
South Bay
South
Union.
Bay Union, and Imperial Beach. So it was a lot of coordination, from the state. And I also have to acknowledge the strong support we received from the state of California, the California Department of Public Health, CDPH. We had a partnership with them where they were doing COVID testing. As a matter of fact, we still have that. They renewed that testing. San Diego State's Department of Public Health, they applied for grant from National Institutes of Health, and South Bay was at the forefront of that study where they offered testing in different ways to see which was more effective. So I really appreciated the sense that we all came together in our time of need and we met the moment. I'm really proud of that. And we work with Supervisor Vargas, Nora Vargas. We work with City Council member Vivian Moreno down in San Diego, with Mayor Salas, with Mayor Sotel Solis, with Mayor Dedina. It was there were so many layers to the coordination that needed to happen to get vaccines at our schools, to get testing, to support our communities. And I think we really modeled how a community can come together in a time of crisis, to really support not only our students and our staff, but our broader community. I'm really proud of that. And it doesn't happen by accident. There's a lot of good people who meant well and cared a lot about our South Bay community to come together and do that. And I just want to make sure I give a shout out to everybody who was part of that process. It's something I think all of us in the South Bay can be really proud. We focus on health and safety and being our brothers and our sisters keeper. And I really appreciated that.
So let's talk statistics if you have any. So what are some of the positive statistics that you have seen recently that parents might want to know? It could be GPA is up. It could be student issues are down. Your truancy is down. But do you have any numbers you want to share with parents that kind of shows again that we're heading in the right direction?
Yeah, I think more than the kind of the quantitative statistics, I'll focus on the qualitative numbers, which means is sometimes those things that are hard to measure, but those interactions of connectivity in our campuses are increasing. When I walk campuses, I hear students tell me that that's one of the things they appreciate, being back in person. Largely speaking, our graduation rate was fairly stable throughout this time. We did transition from what we call the Sweetwater graduation plan to the state of California graduation plan, because I was actually in statute, the state of California said you must offer this as an option for students who maybe had less credits due to something related to COVID. But what we're doing very strongly now is bringing some of this high dosage tutoring, for example, starting in January, and it's going to focus in mathematics, because math is an area that across the board in our district and across the state and the country really took a hit in terms of the depth of understanding and the depth of knowledge that exists. So really bringing some of this high dosage tutoring that's out there, providing for some of these extracurricular activities, working with our after school programs to make sure that they're available for students who, for whatever reason, need to be on a campus before or after school. Those are the types of things we've really been focusing on, is to really bring the social emotional learning and 360-degree support to our students.
Has in fairness and comparability, has the dropout rate decreased, which means are more students staying in school because of all these programs that you have in place now? Have you noticed? Unfortunately, that's always going to be a number. But has that number stabilized? Are you noticing that more kids are not dropping out? Is there a positive light on that?
I think what we saw over COVID is a disengagement that happened.
Yeah.
And now that we're back, we're definitely looking at it in different ways. Again, from a graduation rate, that's remained fairly stable. There's a report that came out about 2 months ago, or maybe a month ago. It was in November. Oh, it's still this month, earlier this month. Really, that looks at things such as the graduation rate. And when our cabinet looked at these statistics, and what we came to understand is it was, as you might imagine, a mixed bag. So in some areas, we outperformed some of the districts in our county of San Diego. In other districts, we underperformed. Whether you're looking at which grade, 8th grade, or we're looking at 11th grade, we're looking at English language arts, or we're looking at math. So I think it was somewhat of a mixed bag. But based on that data and those statistics, what it definitely told us is we needed to bring back some of these supports for our students and engage them in a really constructive way. And really, we had I also want to acknowledge the federal and the state governments. They provided a significant number of resources for us to do exactly this, and that's what we're doing. I want to make sure that they know that they have our gratitude, number one, and number two, that they also know that we're putting it to good use to support our students.
It's got to be a challenge, because COVID in your world, in your education world, did not bear good fruit. And I almost want to say give a hall pass on those numbers, because those numbers are not real numbers. I think the real numbers are going to show up in 2022, 23, 24 in the reports. And I think I'm optimistic and I'm positive to believe that students who are in 7th and 8th grade now are going to see the benefits of what they experienced and what they have in front of them, and value education, and value school, and value the programs, and value each other. I was hoping to hear something like bullying has gone down, which I probably believe it has. I think one of the things we've learned in the social structure during COVID is respect for each other. And you talk about, of course, helping young people in school discover themselves, a lot more tolerance. I'm really hoping to see numbers that point to greater tolerance, greater respect, and greater understanding for the diversity of a student body at all levels, because that is a lifeboat for the next time we have something that's going to challenge us. We have each other, and we have commonalities, but we also have a mutual respect. We have civility.
And I think that's such a wonderful learning from a very just critical situation that we all faced. I had some very challenging conversations with students and staff who lost a family member due to COVID. And so, the expectations needed to be measured to account for the fact that the level of trauma that was going on in our community was varied. Some students barely noticed there was a pandemic other than having to be at home. Other students lost a family member, their main breadwinner, and having to struggle with, how are you going to pay the rent? How are you going to put food on the table? It's difficult to learn when you're trying to figure out how you're going to have shelter. And
Right.
so the level of trauma, I think, varied across our district. And I think we are going to be in a long-term and perhaps sustained transition. And so I think I have conversations with students, they definitely have that newfound appreciation for being able to be in person, to have their teachers. But it's also been 2 years of not being able to have that growth and that development of that social interaction. And I think that's something that we are focusing on as the educators, as the adults, to make sure our students regain that. And this year, our focus has been on acceleration. of learning, because we understand that it's needed at this time. Many of our students need to accelerate to get to be able to be where they need to be, and also being with a keen sense on equity. And so there's a lot of work for us to do. But I think as adults, we're ready to meet this moment. We got past the last 2 years of crisis, which really is an inflection point, and we're here now, and we're putting some plans in place. We're bringing resources to bear to really support our students so that they can have that growth and that development, so that by the time they exit our system through graduation or whatnot, that they're able to be productive members of our society, of our democracy. Because I definitely think that civility and understanding of the role that civility plays in a democracy is key. Because really is a marketplace of ideas, and there's a cacophony of ideas.
Yep.
And to be able to have that in a respectful way is really important. And one of the bedrock ways that we do that in American democracy is our schools. And so for us to be able to bring together, and like, if kids want to start a debate club, they want to, there's a debate club if you actually want to learn how to do that. And so the ability to be able to bring our community together, I think parents also miss that, the ability to see their kids, whether it's performing art or performing athletics or performing robotics or performing some of the parents also miss that, the ability to feel that connection to your kids is critically important. And so for me, I just want to say, I think our district is in a really stable place. We're transitioning to the world after the pandemic, and we all are working very hard, working tirelessly to make sure we support our students and our staff in a way that's respectful and that really takes to heart every single person that we encounter.
Does the school district, or do you have kind of a mantra right now? Do you kind of have a battle cry or a phrase or a saying that you're kind of using to motivate and say, sometimes there's campaigns or again, a mantra or a phrase. Is there something that you've been kind of using on a regular basis to kind of get people on the same page on where they're at and move them forward, to engage, to collaborate? Is there something you have that you want to share?
It's not necessarily a catchphrase, but as I've been having conversations, really this focus on learning through experience, experiential learning, whether it's in a classroom, whether you're doing project-based learning, whether you're doing internships and externships, whether it's athletics or VAPA on a play. We learn in different contexts as human beings. So for me, it's learning through doing, learning through experience. I think that's really where that transitioning is happening. A number of us have been going on what I'll call a tour, going to visit other districts to see what they're doing with experiential learning, college and career, technical education, and different pathways for success. Because that's the other thing that's happening, as we notice, again, our economy feels like there's a shift, a fundamental shift going on in our economy. So how do we provide our students with the education that they're going to need for jobs that don't even exist? And really that comes from doing, that comes from going out there and exploring, whether it's your natural environment or your built environment. So that's something I've been focused on. It's not necessarily, I don't have a catchphrase, but
Right.
learning through experience.
Experiential learning.
Exactly.
Okay, that's good, because it does speak to, like we mentioned earlier in the broadcast, you've got a classroom of 32 plus students, 32 different personalities, 32 possibly different ways to learn. And I could easily say, and when I was in high school, it probably wasn't like that. It was a vanilla shake, no flavor. This is kind of how the reading, arithmetic, and writing, kind of thing. But it's good to see how education has opened up, how curriculum has become a little bit more malleable, and it seeks to capture a student where they're at and how they learn and kind of create that connectivity. I think that speaks volumes to our education system. It speaks volume to the administration of our school districts, who are willing to take those chances and figure things out like that. So that's good. We're just about out of time. Was there anything that you wanted to discuss in the last few moments? Is there anything that you want to put out there that we didn't cover here, that you think is important to share with our audience?
So thank you for that opportunity. In a sense of belated Thanksgiving, I do want to extend my gratitude to everybody in our community, whether you're a parent, whether you're a student, whether you're a teacher, whether you're a classified staff member, whether you're a community member who cares what happens in our district. I want to extend a very deep sense of gratitude for the trust, for the support. Know that on our end, as employees, as public servants, really the focus is on public servant, and being able to provide those resources for our community is critically important. And so I just want to convey a deep sense of gratitude and a sense that really our district has reached a point of stability after going through turbulence the last couple of years, and that means a lot to us as educators, and I hope it means a lot to all of us in our community as well.
We have a comment from our producer here, Sarah, who is just very thankful for your transparency. And I think that's very important to acknowledge is we kind of we bear our soul on our podcast. This is a safe place, but we've had a lot of great guests. And the one thing that is the common thread with our hometown podcast is that our guests are kind enough and respectful enough and honest enough with us and themselves to be transparent. And so I appreciate that. We definitely know that there's two sides to every story. There's two sides to every coin, but the reality is that through these conversations, hopefully you've been enlightened and understand the burden that was placed on our educators, during a very dark time in our human history. And there's sometimes just no right answer. You just have to work through it. And I know if you were like me in March, April, May, June of 2020, you're just thinking, when's the end coming? And like the good book says, this too shall pass, and it has passed. And now we look back and say, first of all, let's brush ourselves off. Let's get ready to do the right thing. Let's learn from our mistakes. Let's develop some best practices. But let's take a moment and thank all those people, from the first responders to the healthcare providers and our educators. And I think often enough, when we look at the conversation about COVID, our educators are not recognized enough for the sacrifices they had to go through to continue to hopefully capture the attention of student body and getting our kids the knowledge they need. Because at some point when this ends, like it's coming to, they still have to go out there and they still have to find a job. They still have to seek out higher education. They still have a life to live in the future. And the best thing that our school districts can do is do what they do best, is getting our kids prepared for their future. And despite everything else, we should be very thankful. So I'm going to ask all of our viewers that if you know somebody who works in the school district, and it could be a teacher, it could be an administrator, it could be part of the essential staff, again, from your food servers, your bus drivers, to the gardeners, to everybody, to the board of trustees, to the staff. If you know someone, just say thank you, and understand that it was not a pleasant world for them either at the time, but they stuck it out and they committed to your kids, and they did the best they could with what they had. And I think grace is a good word to use in showing to people. And I also want to encourage that to each other. So I'm going to sound off on our sponsors, and I'm going to give you my last thought of the day. So this great episode, a very enlightening and honest and transparent episode, number 7, was sponsored by CopyLink, Kevin and Kimberly Marshall, celebrating 30 years as your trusted source for office technology and managed services. I'm going to have Kevin Marshall on one of these days, and you want to talk about a man who loves his community and is invested in his community. He is a gem. I also want to remind you that if you live in the city of Chula Vista, or actually anywhere now, you are starting to see information about this food and waste program, and that is SB 1383. Many cities are delivering in different ways, but Chula Vista has a great campaign called Feed the Green. I'm just going to go make very quickly. If it's not metal, if it's not plastic, if it's biodegradable food, I'm talking meat, bones, skin, greens, that kind of stuff, check your chart that gets mailed to you. It goes in the green. This helps reduce the waste in our landfill. So just know that City of Chula Vista's Food and Waste Program campaign, Feed the Green. I also want to say thank you to Minnie Rezlowski, my friend and broker at 24K Realty International. And this is it for today. So I'm going to ask you as we end, be kind to yourself and be kind to others. This is our hometown podcast signing off. Michael Monaco with Superintendent of Sweetwater Union High School District, Dr. Moises Aguirre. Have a wonderful night.